In this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate the concept of the static and final keywords in Java. So basically, the static keyword that I'm going to show you first in Java is used for memory management mainly. We can apply, obviously, Java static keywords with variables, methods, blocks, and nested classes as well. But importantly, the static keyword belongs to the class, then instance of the class. And the static keyword can be a variable, also known as the class variable, for example. It can be a method, which is also known as a class method. It can be a block or nested class. So we basically declare any variable as static by using the keyword called static. And this static variable can be then used to refer the common property of all objects. So for example, like the company name of an employee, college name of students, etc. The static variable gets memory only once in a class area at the time of class loading. And one of the advantages of using a static variable that it makes the program memory efficient. The final keyword in Java, on the other hand, is used to restrict the user. In other words, the Java final keyword can be used in many contexts. So final can be a variable, method, or class. The final keyword can be applied with the variables. A final variable that have no value, it is called a blank final variable, or uninitialized final variable. It can be initialized in the constructor only, and the blank final variable can be static also, which will be initialized in the static block only. So the basic differences between the static and the final keywords in Java. Next, let me demonstrate how this actually works so you can actually see when we apply within our program both the static and the final keywords. So I'm going to go ahead and open our Java Eclipse editor. Once we're in the Eclipse editor, I'm going to go ahead and create a new class. So simply right click on the folder, choose new, and then click on class. I'm going to call this student and click finish. And this creates a public class called student. Now instead of public, I'm going to go ahead and just simply remove the public and leave it as class student. Typically, when we create, let's say, a variable or define our classes further, for example, if I were to say int, let's say the roll number of the student as integer, and then string would be the name, and college would also be the string, and this would equals, let's say, UWM, put a semicolon. Now at this point, it does not contain any static keyword. So suppose, let's say there are 500 students in my college, and now all instance data members will get memory each time when object is created. So all student have its unique roll number and name, so instance data member is good. Here college refers to the common property of all objects. So if you were to make it static, then this field will get memory only once as opposed to every single time, because note that Java static property is shared to all objects. So in fact, let me show you this. So for instance, if I were to make the string college, for example, as static, all I would have to do is use the static keyword before the string. So right here, if I were to stay static, this would make the string college equals UWM as static. So let me correct the syntax here. The semicolon goes outside the quotations. There we go. So once I have defined the static keyword, I can continue further. So for example, if I were to say student int is R, and then string would be N, open the curly braces, specify the roll number equals to R, and then name would equal N, and then close the curly braces. Next, I can define the void display. Of course, we can have certain output as well. So for instance, I'm going to say void display, set of parentheses, curly braces, and do a simple system.out.print in specify roll number plus and then also use the name. In addition, I'm also going to use, for example, plus the college as well. Great, put a semicolon and then close the curly braces. And next I can simply define the public static void main and then use my string argument with brackets, open the curly braces, and say student S1 would equal new student. Give it certain parameters, let's say 111, comma, and this would be John. And my second student, for instance, would be S2, and this would equal new student, could be 222, comma, and I can say Sally, semicolon, and of course display. So S1 dot display and then S2 dot display, which is the same thing, and close the set of parentheses. Of course, tell Java that this is a print in, so just quickly fix the syntax here. Perfect. So if I were to test this out, for instance, using the static keyword in this example, let me go ahead and run this. So click on run, the save and launch dialog box appears, click OK, and Java is going to give me the output that says 111 John at UWM and then 222 Sally at the same university. So this is an example of a static keyword. So once again, static keyword can be applied to instance variables and methods also, but not to classes. When applied, variables and methods can be called without the help of an object. And final that we'll take a look at next is a keyword that can be applied to all constructs, variables, methods, as well as classes. And when we apply the final keyword, it behaves very differently with each of them with different functionalities, and we'll take a look at next how to apply and use the final keyword. So let me go ahead and simply create a new class. So just scroll up here, right click, choose new, click on class, and I'm going to call this, let's say, bike 9. Click finish, and this creates a public class. I'm going to remove the public and just leave it as class bike 9, and here I'm going to specify a final integer int and call it speed limit equals 90. And again, just a comment here so we can see this is our final variable. Specify the void run and then our curly braces, specify speed limit equals 400. Now notice when I use 400, I have already specified above as final int speed limit equals 90. Now I cannot really change the speed limit 400, but just for demonstration purposes I'm going to leave it as is for now. And next I'm going to do the public static void main and our string argument with a set of brackets, and then of course our curly braces, specify bike 9, let's say object or obj equals new bike 9 with a set of parentheses, and simply specify obj dot run method and close the parentheses. I also need a semicolon up here, and of course if I were to test this out, I'm not going to get the output. In fact, I'm going to get an error because right here the speed limit is 400, and if I were to check the syntax within Eclipse, it just says that either remove the modifiers of speed limit, rename the file, or rename it in the workspace. In other words, Java can't really distinguish. It needs to know where is this coming from since I've specified the final int. Even if I were to run this, for example, let's run it. Click on run, save and launch dialog box appears, click OK, and Java says obviously there are errors in the workspace, which is fine. Let me go ahead and proceed, and it terminates at bike 9. Let me in fact give you another example to further clarify both the static and the final keywords. So I'm going to go ahead and in fact close this, right click Java introduction, create a new class, and I'm going to call this class, let's say, bank. Click finish, and here's our class only called bank, or let me go ahead and just leave it as public. So I'm going to call it public class as bank. And next, let's go ahead and create a public static void main. Use our string argument with a set of brackets, and then open our curly braces. Specify the int as dollars equals, let's say, 500. And again, this is non-final, right? So which means that it can be reassigned. So let me go ahead and do a printout called system.out.print in, and I'm going to call it dollars before reassigned plus dollars, put a semicolon. Okay, so far so good. Next, I'm going to specify dollars equals 600. So I'm going to change the value. At this point, it is obviously non-final, right? Because I've not specified the static or the final keywords at this point. And let's go ahead and do a system.out.print once again. And I'm going to call it dollars after reassigned plus dollars. So we see what's happening here, right? Great. And here I'm going to introduce the final. I'm going to call it double, and let's say rate equals, could be any conversion rates, for example, would be 61.5. And here this is a final keyword being used, which means it cannot be reassigned. So let me go ahead and do a system.out.print in, and let's go ahead and say dollar rate is dollar, and then concatenate this with the dollar sign and our rate variable. Put a semicolon outside the parentheses. And of course, if I were to, let's say, use something like, or change the value again for rate to 65, for instance, this would raise obviously an error. So let me go ahead and fix the syntax for the print commands here. So Java knows, print in. And again, this is where the error would pop up because I cannot change the final double, whereas I'm able to change up above here because I'm not assigning, or these are non-final. So if I were to run this code, for example, let's click on run, save and launch dialog box appears, bank.java, click OK. If I click proceed, of course it's going to give me the error, and it's going to say the final local variable cannot be assigned. It must be blank and not using a compound assignment. So if I were to make this, let's say, a comment, or comment this out and rerun this code, click OK, click proceed. Now I'm going to get dollars before reassigned is 500 because that's what I'm getting from my first int dollars equals 500, and then of course dollars after reassigned equals 600, which is our second part of the output, and then the dollar rate is $61.5. So another quick example of how to use the static or the final keywords in Java. Now before I end this lesson, let me in fact navigate to my browser and show you how to find these keywords online. So if you were to just go to Google, for example, and search for Java keywords, you'll see a bunch of options or links. So for instance, let me navigate to my Chrome, for example, the browser, and here's a list of keywords. So all you have to do is just go to Wikipedia, for example, and search for list of Java keywords. And if I were to scroll down, for example, let me go ahead and navigate down to the word that says static or final. Okay, so here's final that we've been working with. So what this again does is simply define an entity once that cannot be changed nor derived from later. More specifically, a final class cannot be subclassed, and a final method cannot be overridden. And that's exactly what I demonstrated and you saw. And a final variable can occur at most once as a left-hand expression or on an executed command. all methods in a final class are implicitly final. Great. Let's navigate down to the static keyword, and there are a bunch of others that you can also take a look at. Here's the static. So the static is used to declare a field, method, or inner class as a class field. And classes maintain one copy of class fields regardless of how many instances exist of that class. Static also is used to define a method as a class method. So you can read about this and take a look at the differences between static and final keywords. And there are a bunch of others as well. As we navigate, as we move forward within this course, I'll use some additional keywords as well, and I'll demonstrate those. So I hope this helps. Practice, and let's move to the next lesson.